to get into this right away because this has been absolutely stellar. We thought that coming out of the UFC 300 event, things were going to drop off, right? I mean, it was inevitable. The buildup was way too incredible. 297, 298, 299, and then 300 culminating in this thing where everybody was just like, this is too much. It's crazy. How are we ever going to continue this? Well, listen, the UFC has figured this shit out, man. And between like the things that Sean Shelby is doing and Dana White is doing, and the fighters that are available and the fighters that are so good, I mean, it makes their jobs really easy, right?
Well,
We
the
got to see it.
one job that's not easy is anybody working for the PFL or One Fight Championship right now, because it is hard to compete with the UFC. Every event they're putting on is a jacked event now for the rest of the year.
It's the one thing that I will say about one, and this is, we've had this conversation before, is that one is still just slightly different. And I say that because one event is going to have kickboxing on it. It's going to have Muay Thai boxing on it. It's going to have straight jiu-jitsu matches on it. It's going to have a plethora of all things mixed martial arts instead of just one show with just mixed martial arts. You know what I mean? Like it does all the specialized matches as well. So I kind of give one a bit of a pass. But when you're talking about PFL Bellator, right, you have to call it that now, or you have to call it, or wait, is it PFLator?
It's PFLator.
PFLator? That's what it is from now on. All right. PFLator, when you're talking about them, it absolutely, you have to try to compare apples to apples. And in doing so, the UFC is just head and shoulders above. Like you don't, I mean, it was bad enough before when you didn't know when there was a PFL event or a Bellator event. Now, so, I mean, you really don't know. And here's the messed up part. They're both on ESPN.
Do they even have anybody big name contracted anymore to outside of the PFL? Like who's Bellator's biggest name, like drawing name?
Patchy Mix. And I'll tell you right now, Patchy Mix may be one of the best fighters not fighting in the UFC right now.
Is it how do you know anything about the contract status? Is this something that we're definitely going to see that UFC debut one day, like soon, or is this down the road, like an MVP thing?
I feel like we are going to see something like this probably sooner than later, but you can guarantee that Bellator and PFL are going to throw a lot of money at some of these people because they're trying to compete. They're trying to compete with the names, but they can't put the events together. Think about that. Like they had Kayla Harrison, couldn't do anything with it. They've got fucking Jake Paul, man.
Yeah, well, they have Jake Paul on contract. I don't know if they're ever going to see Jake Paul do an MMA fight. And if he does, it's probably going to be against a former pro boxer.
Well, I mean, listen, maybe we can get Jake Paul and CM Punk.
I don't want to see that.
No? Oh.
No.
I mean, yeah, listen,
it can't be. Jake Paul would rock CM Punk in an MMA fight, and it has nothing to do with skill. I just think that he'll catch him.
It can't be any worse than watching Anderson Silva in an announcement that I heard, and I really hope that this is just a computer clickbait thing, but Anderson Silva in a boxing match against Terry Crews.
That's not happening. That's not happening. Please don't let that happen.
Please.
We've had enough of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we get into talking about the details of 302, let's talk about a little bit about 304. 304 got announced. Now, this is my main event for I'm just going to blow the top here. Sure. Bobby Green versus Paddy the Baddy. What are they do? They just set the kid up for murder and to be murdered. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, top of your card for 304, you've got Leon Edwards defending against, rightfully so, against Bilal Muhammad. Bilal Muhammad has earned his spot. There's no doubt about that. But this is going to be, if Leon Edwards can stay on the outside, he's going to pick Bilal Muhammad apart. If Bilal Muhammad can get a hold of Leon Edwards and take him down, it's going to be the second most boring main event you've ever seen since Anderson Silva versus Talis Laitis. Period.
You were there live for that, weren't you?
Unfortunately, yeah, I was. Yeah. Yeah.
Can we
And
talk about Bobby Green versus Paddy, please?
I thought that my karma was going to end there, but apparently not, because here we are talking about the rest of this fight. Bobby Green. Okay, listen, Bobby Green better get a lawyer, because Bobby Green is going to need a lawyer, because he's going to be an absolute murderer in this.
This is a manslaughter charge.
Bobby Green is going to beat on Paddy Pimblett like Paddy Pimblett took a wrong turn in a wrong neighborhood. You know
He's
what I'm
gonna
saying?
beat on Paddy Pimblett like you do on your microphone.
I mean, that does happen. Yeah, this fight, however, is going to be, there's going to be so much shit talking in this fight leading up to it. And I don't think that Paddy Pimblett's going to be able to handle it, because Bobby Green carries himself in such a way that, you know, he doesn't play the game. I mean, we've seen it before. Remember, he got pressed up on in a hallway, right? And that didn't work out so well for the team that did the pressing.
This isn't an act, and this isn't a defensive thing with Bobby. Like, some guys, you'll put a camera on and they do this tough guy thing, and I think that's how Nate Diaz and Nick Diaz kind of how they developed their style. It was a insecurity thing, and it came out of that. Then you have some guys who try to act tough on camera that are just, that they're just bullshit, and they're going to cower out and tap out, during round 2, in between round 3.
Right.
But then you have some real motherfucking gangsters, and Bobby Green is as real as they come. I don't need to know him personally to know that this motherfucker he doesn't care, guys. He doesn't give a shit.
Yeah. And if that wasn't enough on this card, guys, I mean, listen, you've also got Arnold Allen and Giga Chikadze has already been announced. Muhammad Makhachev against Manel Kape has been announced. I don't like that fight for Manel Kape at all.
No.
Makhachev is an absolute beast. And in the co-main event, in a rematch of a co-main event, Tom Aspinall against Curtis Blaydes. These are just the fights that have been announced so far. Unreal.
Tom Aspinall within 2 minutes.
Listen, we all know what happened last time. Last time was when Tom Aspinall blew his knee out and he was on the show. But since coming back, he has been an absolute animal. I think that it's a different case. Curtis Blaydes, no knock on him. I mean, and this is the heavyweight division. Anything can happen, but I don't think that Curtis Blaydes will be able to handle the power of Tom Aspinall, who is on an absolute mission right now to prove that he is deserving of not just being the interim champion, but also being the actual champion.
No, we've had this discussion before. In my books, he is the actual champion. And in a lot of other people's books, Tom Aspinall is the real heavyweight champion of the UFC. He's not an interim champion. I don't care. John Jones is basically carrying the BMF version of the heavyweight title.
Wow. All right.
But
I mean, I can see that. I can see that.
Now let's go to the thumbnail. We have a thumbnail that got popped up. So anybody that tuned in because of this thumbnail, it's a bit tricky.
Well, this is the question that I ask. I mean, why does everybody, we're talking about UFC 302, and coming up at the main card of UFC 302 is the main event of Islam Makhachev taking on Dustin Poirier. And everybody right away is already like, oh, Dustin Poirier, this is his time. This is his chance, blah, blah, blah. But he's been here before, and he's been here against the same camp before. Like, he's already fought Islam Makhachev's mentor, right, in Khabib Nurmagomedov. And we saw what happened there. Dustin Poirier is one of these fighters, and this is not a knock on Dustin, or maybe it is. I don't fucking know. He's a guy who fights very, very well, but he's also a guy that tends to lose focus in some of these bigger main event title fights for sure. Right? I don't think that Islam Makhachev is deserving of all the hate that he's been getting. I mean, if you think about it, he's done nothing but go in. The only person that he's even had to go to a decision with was that first fight that he had with Alexander Volkanovski. Outside of that, he knocked out Volkanovski on the return. He submitted Charles Oliveira. He knocked out Bobby Green, and he submitted Dan Hooker. Those are just his last 5 fights.
I think it's the style that people hate on. I don't think people actually hate Islam.
Do you think it's because, so when you say the style, it's because they're seeing Khabib 2.0?
It's a bit of that. And you've seen this with the early UFC days too. Once, like Hoy said, gone on it with his journey, and you've seen a lot of guys developing that heavy jiu-jitsu style, that there was a lot of guys that were getting pissed off with it. Then in the mid 2000s, the wrestlers came in and they were very dominant, and they were doing the lay and pray, and people were starting to get pissed off with that. I think that's what this style is the nowadays version of that, where they know that it's a combination of both. They're going to take you down. They're going to cross your legs. They're going to hold you and wear you out. They'll do this for 4 or 5 rounds, then catch you in a rear naked choke. That's the strategy of this camp. Now, mind you, Islam has been showing a lot of really good stand up. He just caught Volk. Before that, in the decision with Volk too, he showed a lot of good stand up. I think personally, he loves to stand up and bang. But I think the camp itself and the camp of that group of people that come over there and fight in the UFC, predominantly a lot of the time, they're using this one strategy to get there. So I don't think the hate on Islam is warranted. I think the hate, maybe you can like whatever style you like, but the person is Islam always goes out there and delivers a fight. So I don't understand why anybody wouldn't want to see that. Yeah.
I think a lot of people do use that Khabib 2.0 thing, but I want to point something out to you right now, is that the only person, okay, the last person that Khabib ever knocked out in his entire career was 2016 against a guy named Darrell Horcher. Yeah, that's right. You heard that right. Darrell Horcher. Not any kind of name whatsoever. Khabib's thing was wrestling you down and submitting you 100%. Islam goes out there, however, and he will go for hands. He will fight you. He will try to knock you out. Look what he did with Volkanovski. Volkanovski, probably a lot of times people were saying the pound for pound best dude out there, right?
Mhm.
Well, look what happened. 3 minutes, 6 seconds, first round, boom, done.
Full fight camp too.
We just got done talking about a guy who's going to be a certified murderer at UFC 304, right? In Bobby Green. Islam Makhachev, first round, 3 minutes, 23 seconds, knocked Bobby Green out. Like, he comes out to throw, he comes out to fight, and then he gets close enough and he uses his wrestling. This is the picture perfect way that it should be in mixed martial arts.
So
Yeah,
basically, we're in agreement. There is no reason to be hating on Islam. The comment sections, leave him alone. The guy comes out and bangs every single time. Just enjoy these fights. So moving on from the main event to the co-main event, what do we got going on there?
Paulo Costa, right? Funny man on Twitter, X,
Secret juice.
right? Hilarious dude on his social media stuff, taking on a guy who is not funny on social media at all, Sean Strickland. That guy is about as dry as week old toast when it comes to any of his social media stuff. It's almost to the point, I got to say, with Sean Strickland and me, it's almost to the point where he's almost cringy. It's almost like he's taken over. He's taken over where, Henry Cejudo left off.
It's always been cringy since the days when he first got the microphone and he was talking about how much porn he watches to nowadays. It's always been cringy. We've talked about this before. I like Sean Strickland as a fighter because I like anybody who just doesn't give a fuck and throws regard out the window. That to
Right.
me, I can appreciate, and I think that's what makes it helps when you're making a perfect fighter, to have somebody that just has no regard for themselves, their social media, their body, or whatever. They're just there to bang. It's great. It's entertaining. But Sean Strickland, you're right, is always been cringy. He's a bit of a douchebag.
It's wild. And you think to yourself, like, because a lot of these guys, they're independent contractors. They don't have, the choice like a WWE does, like pro wrestling does, where a company gets behind them and really gives them a push, doing so many other things. It's up to them. It's up to their management in the world of UFC, right?
Mm.
You have certain things that they do, but in reality, it's up to them. The biggest way for these guys to get over is to have a social media presence. And if your social media presence is coming off of your own personalities, That's got to be the toughest way to try to get yourself over, man. You know what I mean? Like, you've got guys that do it very well because they understand the game. A guy like a Sean O'Malley, a guy like Apollo Costa, right? That can do it very, very well. A guy like a Mike Perry, because they do it very well. Even Jake Paul, fantastic.
I was going to say the Paul brothers, yeah.
100%, but they've been doing it since they were knee-high to a grasshopper. So
they taught everyone else how to do it.
That's what I'm saying. Everybody kind of emulates that, right? But Sean Strickland just doesn't get it. I don't think it's in his persona to be that kind of endearing guy. That kind of guy that you're like, I like watching this guy's content because it makes me kind of laugh or makes me feel good. You watch Sean's content because it's like, holy shit, what the fuck is Sean going to do next? Somebody show up at Sean's driveway and he pulls a gun out on them. Is Sean going to cry on a podcast? Like, wild.
Are we in a situation, though, where Sean should have got the rematch?
Should have taken the rematch. Should have gotten it, should have taken it, and then, yes.
Yeah. So I think this fight is almost perfect. Because Paulo would have been the next guy in line anyway. So we're getting a number one contenders match, basically, again.
100%. Now,
okay, so
if that wasn't enough for 302, Kevin Holland is fighting Mikhail Oleksiejczyk. This fight is going to be a banger because it's always a banger because Kevin Holland is in it. I love watching him fight. Jailton Almeida and Alexander Romanov, huge heavyweights fighting in that one. And closing off to start off the entire pay-per-view for this, Randy Brown taking on Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos in what is going to be an absolute banger, 100%. Roman Kopylov is also fighting on this card. Grant Dawson's fighting on this card. Phil Rowe is fighting on this card. This whole thing is being kicked off in the prelims by Nico Price and Alex Morono.
Which is going to be a great fight, too. Nico Price, man. Every fight he's in, he either goes to sleep or he puts you to sleep.
The guy who took CM Punk's in-ring virginity, Mickey Gall, is going to be fighting on this card as well. So, like, the way that UFC is putting together these pay-per-view cards, we thought they weren't going to have enough, but I mean, they talk about it. They've been talking about it for a long time. Dana's always been one of these, like, we employ 400,372,000 people. You know what I mean? He's always been one of these guys to throw that out there, and everybody's been like, whoa, where are these guys? Why aren't they fighting on these cards then? Well, guess what, motherfuckers? They're fighting on these cards now.
Well, guess who else is fighting soon? My Irish brethren. He's back, ladies and gentlemen. Conor McGregor. I know everyone's heard the news because who hasn't heard the news? Donald Trump probably tweeted it out and was like, hey, I don't know if you guys heard. Biden was like, I don't know if you guys heard. The world leaders everywhere. I don't know if you guys heard. Conor McGregor is back at the end of June, ladies and gentlemen. Watch him murder a jobber. Oh, I can't wait.
Well, and here's the unfortunate news about that card.
Well, don't say anything. What?
You remember the co-main event of what that was supposed to be, correct?
What was that?
It was supposed to be Khalil Roundtree and Jamal Hill.
Yeah.
Khalil Roundtree is officially out.
No,
he's under investigation because he had taken some banned substance, apparently. Of course, it turns into one of those, like, my camp is looking into this, and I can't believe I fell for these people that were there to give me this stuff, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, he is taking responsibility. He's like, I took it. I got to go through this, right? And I mean, bro, I understand hard work, Khalil, but
the motherfucker looks like Goldberg out there, dude.
He looked like he was about ready to pop, and he did.
Hey!